At 19 years old, Wessel Nijman sat in front of a camera in his own home and threw a darts match on purpose, missing doubles he could hit in his sleep, all because someone had reached him through a friend's Instagram account at a moment when the world had gone quiet and the money had stopped coming in. What he did next, the morning the investigators came knocking, is the reason he is the only player from the 2020 Modus match-fixing era who is still standing inside the top 25 of professional darts today. And once you understand the choice he made in that room, you cannot look at his comeback the same way again. The starting point matters here. Before May of 2020, Nijman sat near the very top of the PDC development tour as a teenage prodigy, 19 years old, Dutch, and widely seen as a future force in the senior game. The world stopped that spring. Professional darts shut down for COVID-19, and a UK-based promoter called Modus stepped in with online streamed events to keep players competitive and earning money. Those broadcasts became some of the only live darts available to bookmakers anywhere on the planet, which meant markets were thin, liquidity was small, and suspicious patterns were easier to spot but also easier to create. On the 14th of May 2020, Nijman walked to an Oki setup in his own home, with a camera pointed at him and a Modus stream beaming live to bettors across multiple countries. David Evans stood as his opponent that day. Nijman lost 0 sets to 4, missed doubles deliberately, threw weak scores on purpose, and did all of it because he had agreed to fix the match in advance. The approach reached him through a friend's Instagram account. According to the documented account of the case, Nijman has stated he was under pressure and needed money. 19 years old, the tour collapsed around him, his income vanished with it, and someone inside his social circle offered a way out, so he took it. What he had no way of knowing was that the fix had already been detected before he ever picked up a dart that day. The International Betting Integrity Association, known as IBIA, had been monitoring the Modus events specifically because the suspicious betting risk on small online streams ran high. Bets placed against Nijman that afternoon triggered the alerts immediately, and the integrity flag went up before the match was even played. A coordinated investigation followed. The Darts Regulation Authority, chaired by Nigel Marr QPM, took the lead on the disciplinary side, working alongside the UK Gambling Commission's Sports Betting Intelligence Unit and Sport Radar Integrity Services on the evidentiary side. Within weeks, they had everything they needed. When the DRA confronted Nijman, he made a decision that would shape the rest of his life in the sport. Cooperation came immediately. He admitted everything, offered no denial, no excuse, and no attempt to muddy the evidence. That single choice is the reason there is a comeback story to tell at all. The sanction the DRA handed down reflected that cooperation. Nijman received a 5-year ban, but 2.5 years of that ban were suspended. The suspended portion came with conditions attached. To earn the reduction, he had to engage with player education and anti-corruption programs run alongside the Professional Darts Players Association, and if he completed those obligations, he would serve roughly 2.5 years and be eligible to return to professional competition. Failure to meet the terms would activate the full 5 years. To understand how unusual that structure was, the comparative record from the same era deserves a full hearing. Gilbert Ulang received 7 years for a fix at the 2016 World Championship preliminary round. Kyle McKinstry, banned in the same wave as Nijman in 2020, received 8 years. 2 years went to Jack Main in 2023. Leighton Bennett received 8 years in November of 2024. Billy Warriner received 10 years in 2024. Prakash Jiwa received 8 years in January of 2025. 11 years went to Andy Jenkins in March of 2025, the longest sanction in DRA history. Across that entire list, Nijman's structurally lighter outcome stands alone, and the reason behind it sits in the official record. He confessed on contact and helped the investigation finish itself. Nigel Marr made the institutional position on these cases plain. Speaking about the broader enforcement effort, his words were, quote, "This shows that any player found guilty of match fixing at any level of the sport will be caught and will face a lengthy ban," end quote. That framing applies to every name on that comparative list, including Nijman. The DRA was not soft on him. The process was procedural. He met the conditions for a suspended portion, and the system applied them. One further piece of context often gets confused in retellings, and pinning it down clearly matters here. 12 days before Nijman's own fixed match, on the 2nd of May 2020, Kyle McKinstry played a match in which he deliberately hit 0, 180s to manipulate the side bet market on that statistic. Wessel Nijman happened to be the opponent in that match. No charges were brought against Nijman in connection with the McKinstry fix since he was an unwitting participant, and McKinstry alone faced sanction for it. McKinstry's punishment came in the form of an 8-year ban effective from the 18th of August 2020, £4,730.64 in costs, and an additional 18 months added on top for refusing to hand over phone records. When the Modus-era cases get discussed together, the line between Nijman as offender on the 14th of May and Nijman as bystander on the 2nd of May has to stay clean. They are two separate matters. Nijman served his ban. During the suspended portion, the educational obligation became something he honoured publicly. Anti-corruption films produced under the PDPA and DRA umbrella featured him sitting on camera, speaking directly to other professional players about what had happened to him. In one of those films, he described the moment the DRA investigation reached him. Quote, "From the moment I found out I was under investigation, my world crashed in, and you're suddenly at the lowest point in your career again when you had just been at your highest point." End quote. That stands as the only substantial, direct on-record statement the documented case file holds in his own words, and it deserves to be left alone because it is the most honest account available of what the experience felt like from the inside. The comeback began in February of 2023. Returning to competition in the Netherlands, he won the Rivierenland Open shortly after, then moved back onto the PDC Development Tour, the under-25 feeder system he had once topped before the ban. Across his comeback period, 3 Development Tour titles ended up on his shelf. By the close of 2024, Nijman topped the PDC Development Tour Order of Merit for the season, and that ranking finish earned him a PDC Tour Card for the senior circuit. What followed in October of 2024 forced the rest of the darts world to pay attention. At Players' Championship 24, Nijman won the title outright. The victory marked his first senior PDC ranking event win, his first proper professional trophy on the main tour, and it arrived inside his first season as a tour card holder. For a player who 4 years earlier had been banned for match fixing at 19, the result delivered the clearest possible statement that the comeback was not a sentimental story but a competitive one. 2 months later came the World Championship debut. On the 22nd of December 2024 at Alexandra Palace, Nijman walked onto the biggest stage in darts for the first time in his career. Drawn against Joe Cullen in the second round, Cullen held the seeded position. Cullen carried a long history of deep runs at major events. The bookmakers, looking at form, looking at the trajectory, looking at how Nijman had been performing on the floor, made Wessel Nijman the pre-match favourite anyway. That market call became the story of the night, and not in any way anyone expected. Cullen won the match 3-0, clinical, sharp, and giving Nijman almost nothing to work with. The press conference afterwards is where Cullen went after the people who had set the price. In the flash interview with Sky Sports reporter Abigail Davies straight after the match, Davies asked Cullen if that was the best he had ever felt on a big stage. The answer came back in a single word, quote, "No," end quote. Once inside the press room, Cullen kept going, quote, "I don't know Wessel personally, but I think the surrounding of the media led to his demise a little bit," end quote. "I've struggled this year on the oche and off the oche, so to find a performance like that, to be honest, I've got you guys to thank because I don't think I would have played like that if I'd read some of the nonsense that I read beforehand," end quote. On the way out, Cullen delivered the line that ended the night, quote, "The way I've been treated with the media and things like that, and I know you guys have no control of the bookies, I've been shown no respect, so I won't be showing any respect to any of you guys tonight. I'm going to go home," end quote. 2 things about that press conference deserve precision. The first is that Cullen aimed his anger at the media and the bookmakers, not at Nijman as a person. He explicitly stated he did not know Nijman personally, and his reaction targeted the framing around the match rather than the man across the oche. The second sits underneath the anger as a market signal. Bookmakers do not make a debutant favourite over a seeded player at a world championship for emotional reasons. They do it because the form numbers tell them to, and the fact that Cullen had to walk out of a press conference defending his own ranking against the perception that a returning match fixer was a stronger pick than him became, in its own backwards way, the strongest possible endorsement of how far Nijman's comeback had travelled in 22 months. Cullen, for what it is worth, lost his next round 3-4 against Gerwyn Price. By early 2026, Wessel Nijman sat inside the top 25 of the PDC Order of Merit, a senior ranking title, a tour card, a world championship appearance, and a documented public record of having served his sanction in full and met every condition the DRA had attached to it, now sat behind his name. This is the part of the story that changes how the comeback ought to be read. The comparative record on Modus-era match fixing remains unforgiving. Ulang, McKinstry, Bennett, Warriner, Jiwa, Jenkins, every other major name from that enforcement period is either still serving a ban, returned without serious competitive impact, or never returned at all, and Nijman stands as the single exception. He is the only player from that wave to have rebuilt himself into a top 25 professional, and the reason he is the exception traces back to a single decision made in 2020 when a 19-year-old confronted with overwhelming evidence chose to confess rather than fight. That choice earned him the suspended sentence. The suspended sentence cut his serve time in half. The shorter serve time allowed a return at 22 rather than 25, which put him back on the development tour while he was still young enough to dominate it. Dominating it produced the tour card, the Players' Championship trophy, the world's debut, and the top 25 ranking. None of that erases what happened on the 14th of May 2020. The match was fixed. People who placed bets in good faith lost money. The integrity of a Modus event was compromised at a moment when those events were holding professional darts together. Those facts remain permanent, and the DRA's ban acknowledged them. What the rest of it means is that the Wessel Nijman story is not the one most fans think it is. Redemption arc in the sentimental sense does not fit, and a scandal that ended a career does not fit either. The accurate description is a documented case of what happens when an offender cooperates fully on day one, when a regulator builds a sanction around incentives for engagement rather than pure punishment, and when a player young enough to recover uses the time he has been given to actually recover. The result is the only successful comeback in modern darts match-fixing history, and the only one that the data, the trophies, and the rankings actually back up. That is what makes this case worth understanding properly. Not the fix in May of 2020, not the ban itself, not the press conference fireworks at Alexandra Palace. The thing that changes how you see Wessel Nijman forever is realizing that everything that has happened to him since is the working out in real time of a decision he made at 19 years old when the evidence landed on the table and he chose to tell the truth.